Good morning, everybody. It's me again. Today I want to do something a little bit different. Normally I'm just talking about things I know about, showing you things to do with bows and arrows and stuff. But today I thought I'd do something a little bit out of the ordinary. I'd do a bit of an investigation about points and point weight. The reason being is because point weights to most beginner archers are something of a mystery. What tends to happen is, and I asked a few members of my club about this, and they said that they have no idea what their point weight actually is and whether or not their point weight is right for what they're doing. I mean, I know that if you shoot competition archery at 70 meters on a range, then yeah, point weight is probably vital because you need your arrow and your bow set up specifically to shoot at that 70 meter range, and you need everything tuned to that. But I'm a field archer and we shoot at lots of different distances. Very rarely are we shooting at 70 meters. We get the occasional one, but it's extremely rare. Targets vary from 10 feet away up to, there's one at 100 meters I've seen, but that's quite rare. I've only ever seen one of those, but that's very unusual. But anyway, so what we're going to do is, does point weight matter to a field archer? What happens if you change your point weight? Are all your points in your arrows the same? Have you ever checked it? That's where I'm going to do that in a little while. Now, I know that for traditional archers, let's say longbow shooters, the people that use wooden arrows, point weights are very, very important. The reason being for that is because they use wooden arrows. Wood, being a natural product, will vary. Therefore, they can only get the spine consistent between all their arrows by adjusting the point weights to compensate for the fact that, you know, a wooden arrow with fine grain will be stiffer than an arrow with a very loose grain. That's just a fact. You can't avoid that. It's a natural product. That's the way it is. The manufacturers try to do the best to even them out, but it's just about impossible. So what the archer has to do is use varying point weights to allow for the fact that each arrow will spine slightly differently, so they have to correct it. But so what I'm going to do is take some points out, weigh them up, and then play with different point weights and see if it actually makes a difference in the way the arrows come out of the bow. I suppose we should discuss how the point weight actually affects the bow in the first place. Now, if we take an arrow, and I've got one here, if you consider the fact that this arrow approaches 0 to 100 miles an hour in that distance, or thereabouts, even for a fairly light bow, 100 miles an hour in a split second is nothing. What happens is the string presses on that end of the arrow, pushes it that way, but the weight, which is predominantly at this end, tries to resist that and doesn't want to move. It has to overcome its own inertia. So what happens is the arrow tries to bend first before that point starts to move. If you want to know how much more the point affects the whole weight of the arrow, if I balance this arrow on my finger, let's just get this in the right place, you see how much further closer to the point end we are than how much of the extra arrow is on this side and how little of it is on this side. That's because the point is taking up most of the weight. The arrow, being carbon, is very light. The point is made of steel, therefore very heavy. So the point, I would assume, is quite important. But is it important when you're shooting at lots of different distances? Do you have to kind of compromise? I have no idea. So what we're going to do is whip some of the points out of these arrows. My first job is to take some of the points out of these arrows and compare the points that I've got and make sure they're all the same. The manufacturers tell me of these arrows that point weight is 90 grains. Now, I've never checked them. I didn't need to. I set my arrows down to my right length, tune them to match my bow. They shoot perfectly straight and true. So I've never even thought about messing about with the point weights. Maybe I'm missing a trick, who knows? So let's get the points out of these arrows and get my scales out, and we'll weigh them up and see what happens. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken 5 points out of my arrows back there, and I've got a couple over here that, you know, we'll get to in a moment. So let's weigh the points and see if they actually all weigh the same. As I said before, the manufacturers tell me that these points are 90 grains. So let's see if they all are. First one, 90.4. That's right. Next one, 90.2. Well, that's okay. The third one, 90.2. Fourth one, 90.6. That's slightly different. The fifth one, 90.2, and that's reasonably consistent. But I found with these, this one here is the same points as that one. And this one, 84 or 85. Let's call it 85. So does that make a big difference if I'm shooting it in a group with these ones? I don't really know. Just as a comparison, I've got this point as well. These are out of some of my old arrows, which were spined exactly the same as the set I'm using now, but it had got this point in it, and this point, this point is 110. Does that make a massive difference to it? I don't know. So what I thought I'm going to do now is I'm going to put 3 of those points back in, which are the 90 grain ones, and I'm going to put 3 of these points in 3 other matching arrows, so that all I've got is 6 arrows, and the only difference between them is 3 of them have got 90 grain points in, and 3 of them have got 110 grain points in, and then we'll get my paper tuning stuff out, and we'll try them and see if there's actually a difference between how they shoot. Let's try that. Okay, so I've changed the points on my arrows. I've got 3 with the 110 grain points in and 3 with the 90 grain points in, so you can tell the difference. The 90 grain points have got white tips at the back, and the 90 grain ones have got red tips on the back. Those are the 110s, those are the 90s. Okay, so when we actually shoot a load of arrows, we'll do that in a minute, you'll be able to tell the difference. But first, the science, the theory. A lighter point will make your arrow travel faster. That's a fact. Think of it like a race car. If a race car has a given engine size, but you make the car lighter, it will be faster. If you make the car heavy with the same engine, it's going to be slower. Exactly the same applies to arrows. A heavier pointed arrow will travel slower through the air. Therefore, you may have to aim a little bit higher to compensate for that. On the upside for the heavier pointed arrow, though, they are probably less liable for deviation in high winds. That is only an issue when you're shooting over a really long distance. If you're only shooting 10, 15 metres, side winds hardly make a difference. But if you're shooting 70, 80, 90 yards, then yes, a big side wind will make a difference. A heavier point might give you a bit of an advantage to that. Other than that, I'm not sure there's too much of a difference between them. What we'll do now is we'll shoot a load of arrows, see if we can get some kind of result. Then I'll get my paper tuner out and we'll put them through the paper tuner and see if there's a deviation in the release from the arrow. I'll shoot a load because, you know, we'll be able to tell whether there's a difference between the points, or we'll take away the ones that are my problem with the bad release or anything like that. So let's shoot some arrows. Well, I can already feel a bit of a difference. I don't know whether you can hear it, but the 110 grain points certainly hit the target harder than the 90s do, and that's only the first 6 arrows. Let's shoot a load more, see how we go. Let's just take you in there and let's have a look at where they all are. Come with me. Well, there's one on the floor there. That was a bit of a bounce back, but all of those are kind of together. Yeah, but there you go. Let's shoot a load more. Oh no. Yeah, the 110 grains definitely hit the target harder. I don't know whether you can hear it through the camera, but it's such a much louder noise. But performance-wise, I'm not so sure. I'm getting tired now. Oh, by the way, please don't judge me for my bad form. You know what they say? Good shooters don't coach, and good coaches can't shoot. That's why we coach, and we spend our time talking rather than actually doing. Don't judge me. I'm not bad, but I could be better. Can you hear the sound of that? That 110 point definitely hits the target a lot harder. Result-wise, we've kind of seen very similar results. Not enough to really make too much of a difference. take you down there and you can have a look at those. I won't stop the camera, just so I can prove I'm not cheating. Hang on a moment. Yeah, that time, I don't know whether you heard it or not, but I put the microphone right by the target. And I don't know whether you can hear, there's a big difference between the sound when it hits the target with the 110s rather than the 90s. I quite like the sound of it, but accuracy-wise, not much in it, is there? That's a 110, that's a 110, that's a 110. Those three are all 90s. I don't see much of a difference. Anyway, let's get the paper tuner out and try that bit, see if we can find any difference with that. Okay, so I've set my paper tuner up. I've got a box on the left that says 90 grains. I'll shoot the 90 grains into that, and the 110 grains into that one, and we'll see the difference. So let's try it. We'll start with the 90 grains first. That's okay. That is perfectly good. It's what I expect, because that's what I use all the time. Yeah. And the third one, just to make sure. Yeah, fine. Now, the 110 grain arrows. Let's see if these make a difference. I'm not sure they do. But and the last one. You know what? I think you can probably see the holes from there. They are so similar that it really doesn't make a great deal of difference. You know what? I would be comfortable in shooting either of those points. They're all dead straight. Let's move that out of the way. They're all dead straight. And I really am not sure. I think the answer is, if you're perfectly comfortable with the way your arrows fly, then Yes, your arrow point is important that you know what it is and they're all the same, but if you're shooting at variable distances like I do, then you don't need to be too technical about what actual grain point you need, as long as you're within a good range. I mean, there's only 20 grains difference between those 2 points, so I wouldn't expect there to be a massive difference. But you know what? I don't think it makes a massive difference. I think the more important thing is to have your bow set up properly, have a decent release. That's far more important than messing about with grains and grain points on your arrow points on your shafts. You know what? I don't think I've really achieved a great deal there, but it's a good experiment. I've been the Barebow Brummie. See you soon. Bye bye.